thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Ada. This is really nice of you, and I'm really excited to hear about what you do as a user experience designer. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Eda Lau. I'm currently a UX designer at Audible. Audible is a Amazon subsidiary company. We produced audiobooks. And I am currently on a team on acquisition. So acquire new members to join Audible and then to really experience the narrative of spoken words. My background, I graduated from UBC in 2008 during the economic crisis. So it was not the best time to graduate. I have a degree in computer science. And how I got into computer science is very interesting because I was thinking that computer science related to like computer animations at the time. I didn't know that it was a very different field. So I got in there. I remember when I graduated, there was only like 5 female among all the male.
Wow.
So I didn't know what I got into. So there's a lot of like database courses, things that I don't even know how I got through, but I got through it. But what intrigued me about design is when I was in my 4th year, I took a software engineering course. And we had a project where we need to build a application. And at that time, it was the transition between Friendster and Facebook. And we were really fascinated. Our team was like, oh, this is a new network that you can share photos. And so we thought that, oh, maybe if we can actually do instant messages on this app, that would be amazing. So that was the project we worked on, and my responsibility was creating a user interface for what that chat feature looks like. And little did I know that, creating the layout of a UI was the actual job. I didn't know that, but I was really fascinated about like the layout, the design, the color, the icons to use. That was really interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, I graduated, knew I wasn't a programmer, not interested in. So I enrolled in a program in Langara at that time called the Digital Design Fundamentals, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a year-long program where I've learned all the Adobe software, TechGalDiaries. We did some WordPress work. And so after the program, the instructor was hiring an intern to be a WordPress developer. And I was like, oh, cool. I like it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed, coding CSS, HTML. So I applied and I got the internship for 6 months. It was great. It was my first job, an hourly rate of $10 an hour. I thought that was pretty good. So I was really happy. And I get to work with her. And she was a designer and I was the developer creating custom WordPress templates. Mm-hmm. And then 6 months later, she decided that, I don't need an intern anymore. Go find yourself a new job. So I was really lucky to get a job as a web designer at a Best Buy Canada. So what I did at that time, I was there for 4 years, and I work on their weekly, monthly, and annual marketing sales, the big online sales, from designing the banner, the marketing website, working with different vendors to actually coding the website. So it's a hybrid of both, like coding and design. But at that time, was really focusing on web design. Mm-hmm. So I was there for 4 years, and I feel like after 4 years, so it's really stagnant. Web design is really not a thing anymore, kind of. Mm-hmm. And so I want to explore different options. And a couple of my friends at that time in 2014 they went down to the States and they were working for Amazon and Microsoft. And they're like, hey, why don't you try coming down to the States and check out UX design? I was like, what is UX design? Nobody knew what that was. It was a really new term. It was really broad. It was kind of web design, but not really because there's many different fields. So I said, okay, well, I'm just going to try it out. Who knows? I mean, I wasn't expecting to get an offer, right? But 3 weeks later, I got an offer with a startup in New York. And I never thought of coming to the States at all. I was intended to go to UK, actually. Oh. Didn't want to go to the States, but I got offered a startup. So it was a startup. At that time, we were building an enterprise communication app. So imagine WhatsApp, but for companies. Okay. And they were hiring a UX/UI designer. And it's a really common term at the time where the UX designer also do the UI component. So I thought, oh, fantastic. It's a startup. It was 3 engineers. and one CTO, and then they were hiring one designer. So I was like, oh, fantastic. This is different than corporate. It's not e-commerce. So I jumped on it. And then 3 weeks after an interview, I got the job. And then 2 weeks later, I changed my life to New York from Vancouver for the first time. It was a great adventure. Got there. I was there for a year. And it was fascinating because working in a startup is so different because everything's changing so rapidly. You make decisions on the fly. And because of a startup, you have the opportunity to make rapid changes and then launch it and test it and iterate it. Versus if you're in a big company, you have all these KPIs that you should meet. You have to have alignment with marketing team, product team, business team. A startup is just like, give a call to the CTO and CEO, hey, this is what we're thinking. Let's launch this. And they're like, okay, sure. So it's a very different expectations. And the pace is way faster. And I got to do a lot of UX work, meaning like the wireframing, the strategy to actual pixel pushing, the UI, the layout, what this icon looks like, what is the design system for both iOS and Android platform, are they aligned, what is the mobile web experience looks like, and then I was working on the marketing copy as well. So it was a combination of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And after a year, the startup decided to move the startup from New York to Thailand because my CEO is from Thai, and he was only 19 when he hired me.
Wow.
So he's just like, oh, I want to go back to Thailand. They have the business team over there. Do you want to relocate? I was like, nope, no, thank you. I don't want to go to Thailand. I love vacation there, but it wasn't a thing for me. So I quit and I joined Audible. So I was with Audible since 2015. And I started as a visual designer. So depending on the company you work for, there's different titles. So for a visual designer at that time is purely just on UI. So UI as in like you define the design system, the color, the components, different use cases. That's what a visual designer is for. So I was in that position for a year before I transitioned to UX. So at that time, the way the team was set up is that you have a visual designer designing the layout, and then you work with the UX designer who define the wireframe, the flow, and then you put the skin on top. So it's more like UX do the work first, and then the visual design come in later to like create the visuals and the colors of the experience. And so after a year, I transitioned to UX because I'm more into the strategy. I want to work with the product person and the business to understand the requirement. And slowly I transitioned to the senior role, and now I'm on a managerial track where now I manage a team of 2 other designers, making sure that the work is what the work coming in is all the problem is well defined, the goal is well defined. We're making sure that the problem we are solving aligns with the overall company goals. So the company has like a couple goals every year, and then we have a set of KPIs we need to hit. So for acquisition, it could be like X number of users sign up for a trial, that kind of metrics, right? So from that, all the projects that comes in, I have to make sure that, okay, is this project aligned to this goal? If so, okay, then we can take it in. So once we take it in, we have to figure out, okay, so now we do a kickoff workshop with the stakeholder to ask all the questions that we need, gather all the previous research, anything that's relevant to the project before the designers start working on like thinking about how do we solve this problem. So so it's been transitioning, and I quite enjoyed doing the work. I know I kind of far-fetched from the background. I kind of lead into that.
No, that's cool.
Yeah. So this is the general idea of what I do right now.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's interesting because you said that you graduated from UBC Computer Science. I'm in the UBC Business and Computer Science major.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how you said that it's kind of changed. I think they started realizing that a lot of people were more interested than just becoming a programmer, so they added more classes to the 4th-year curriculum. So I think we had like a game design one or like an animation one, and they added like a few other different classes now. I think they have a digital media.
I heard one of my friend, he was my colleague at Best Buy, and he took a interaction program at SMU.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So at that time, that was like decades ago, but it's more aligned with what. He's also a UX designer too, but that program allows him to do more, just not like programming a database, but more for interactions. So
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And I didn't know about the program until I'm like third year in at UBC. And it's like, well, I'm not going to change school now, right?
Yeah.
But how do you like your program?
It's good. I just kind of like around the same thing. It's a little bit restrictive. Like, it's still very much based on like, algorithms, data structures, databases. Like, it's on the track for you to become a software engineer still. So it can be a little bit limiting, but I think they're trying to add more different areas. So like if you're interested in like machine learning or AI or like design, like they're starting to add a little bit more courses. But
that's good. Yeah. I mean, like I like from the design perspective, there's many different area, right? So one of the questions you wanted to ask, I saw it's like, under the UX umbrella, there's a lot of different areas you can actually dive into.
Yeah.
So you can do specifically UX work, which is like strategy, the wireframe, the flow, and that's it. You have the visual designer component, which is really the colors, the components, design system. So how do you scale this typography or this color scheme to all different platforms, from not just mobile apps, maybe prints for like prints. So how do you scale on that? There's also motion designer. Some companies or some products actually focus heavily on motion. So how do you deal with that? There's also research too. So research also goes into the umbrella of UX research. So there's a lot of my colleagues who are in the research title also does some design as well. But their majority of the work is like figure out what we are testing, what is the goal of the test, how to define the test, and what kind of platform is best for the test. Either is it moderated testing or unmoderated testing, where we use platform called usertesting.com, where we put the mocks up. And then we'll ask the users to like walk through the task and speak out loud and tell us what they think of the experience.
I think I've used that before. Usertesting.com.
Yeah, usertesting.com.
Oh, yeah, I think I signed up to be one.
Yeah, it's like, I think you get paid like $10 for a test or something. It's fantastic. I've done it before too. It's really good. It's a very quick way for you to get a feedback based on whatever you have. So it's a really quick turnaround. And then we do some moderate testing where we invite users to the company, to the building, and we do like an actual user interview, asking them very more like a conversational method. So that way we can dig more into the why they think the way they think, why do they do certain things. So it depends. So so there's a research components to the UX. So there's many different area, and I think someone who is thinking about the UX field, one of the advice I would say is to explore different area, try different things, try out testing, try out to partner with the researcher and see if you like digging into the research, the why people are doing certain things, what are the motivations, what are the pain points. Or if you're more like a visual person, perhaps you really like motion and visual design. So try it out first, because I didn't know what I would like to do until now I feel like I like the managerial track versus like a individual contributor. So one thing that I know a lot of the companies, like the big corporate, they have a separate role where an individual contributor are the ones who are actually designing the deliverables. Then you have the managerial track, which is I'm currently on, is to manage a team for the project. So it's not necessary I do the day-to-day design work, but I have to understand what the project's coming in and how to assign, delegate the work to other designers so that the whole team is able to bring the project to life. So there's different tracks. Both are equally good. And it depends on the company too. The different company has different culture. So definitely, I think the interviewing process is interesting, because it's not just you being interviewed, but it's you also interviewing the company to see if you actually if the culture is aligned. Do you like the way they structure the team? So there's a whole lot of things about interviewing. So
cool. So what is kind of a day in the life at Audible? Do you still work in a team, like an agile team? So you work with other developers, other people, or is it more like a group of designers? So it's like a cross-functional team?
It's more a cross-functional team. So every day I have a stand-up with my product partners and my UX teams just to give a status of what we work on yesterday, what we work on today, and if there's any blockers, we just try to call it out. And then we then we assign that action item to somebody to figure out what the next step is.
Okay.
And then I usually have a lot of meetings just to catch up with different stakeholders, either product marketing, or my UX leadership, just to status update or discuss some open issues and see what's how we're moving forward. We also use Jira, which is another software to track all the dev work and all the UX work that we are doing. I do a lot of planning in my work, just to plan out what we're working on for the next 3 months, and to make sure that what we're planning to do is matching the overall product roadmap. So product usually takes about 3 months before it comes to UX. So product takes like 3 months to figure out, okay, in the next 3 months, I think we should work on these big issues. And then once the leadership has decided, okay, this is the thing we're going to work on, then UX comes in to then figure out, okay, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, we need to dig into it more. And then developer comes in too to give us a rough estimate of the sizing. So sizing as in, does this take like a month, 2 months, 3 months to build? If so, then if it's 4 months, can we break it into like smaller chunks and do it in a progressive way? Right. So there's a lot of sync up during the day, but and then we have leadership with review and stakeholder review every week, just so that everyone is transparent about the process we're doing and all the design work, because a lot of times there's changes every other day, and then those changes need to be communicated to all the people involved in the project. And what I find that fell short a lot of time is that there's like a telephone game where the leader told another leader, the leader told another leader, and the leader told one of the designer, and then it just like became like a rumor. Everyone's like, I don't know where this is coming from. So a lot of times, like clarifying these rumors, making sure, okay, this is not true. Oh, this is true. Okay, then communicate to everybody. Okay, this is the truth. Like, listen to this. So a lot of like, managing those type of work. That's what I usually do on a day-to-day basis.
Cool. And what are some important skills? I know that you talked a bit about some of the things that you have to do in part of your role. Are there any specific tools or programs that people interested in this field should try to learn?
I think for hard skills, we use Sketch as the main tool for design. There's a lot of plugin where you can do a lot of like dynamic layout. We don't have to do like a lot of components. You can use library. So I think Sketch is one of the key software to know how to use.
Designers also have to know how to program, say like in HTML or CSS.
It's good to know, but we don't really need to do that on a day-to-day basis, because we also, if it's a website, we should have a front-end developer to do that. It's good to know, but it's also important to know prototyping tools out there. So we use InVision as a main tool to share our mocks and also get feedback directly. But it's a limiting program because it doesn't have a lot of complex animation interaction. So there's also Protopie we are using too as well, where Protopie has a more extensive libraries of interaction you can do. Also InVision Studio is another one that we try to explore. So I think prototyping is more important than just creating CSS and HTML, just because if you as a designer can create a prototype, clickable prototype, and illustrating this is the interaction, what happens if you click A to B to C to the leadership, it's way easier to persuade them, to show them what your idea is.
Right.
Yeah, so these are the hard like skills that I think is necessary for a designer. So, and then what I think, and the skills to have is research skill, learning like all different research methods and how to ask questions, different way of asking questions. So I remember last year I was involved in a research project for 6 months long, and we did a lot of in-home research at users' home. That was my first time. It was daunting because when you have to go into someone's home, and I had amazing colleagues who are just so good at making the interviewees comfortable and just, setting the context, here, thank you for welcoming us to your home. We're here to learn. So letting them know that, hey, we're here to learn from you. anything you share is very valuable. Just second the contact, letting them know that we're just here to listen. We're want to see what kind of problems you have, and perhaps we can then bring it back to our leadership and just try to change the experience so that it makes it better. We did. I think I set in like 10 to 12 of them in people's home. And it was a lot of work. And after the research, what we do is we come back to the office and we have like a 4 days or 5 days long of synthesis with all the stakeholders. So stakeholders, meaning people from marketing, product, or customer service, can come actually to either come into the research, either in home or on the call. And then we'll all start to synthesize what are the key themes that we start to hear, what are the patterns we heard from all the participants, and then we'll post it on the board, and then we start to group different ideas together to see if there's any merging like pain points that we see from customers. If so, then how do we gonna go about from it? So we do a lot of that. So knowing like research methods, you don't have to be like an expert in like asking questions, but knowing how to ask the question, what kind of methods to ask, those are pretty good, important skills to have, I think.
Yeah.
And then in terms of soft skills, it's just, being transparent, proactive in your communications. I think that's like the key. Learning how to persuade your stakeholder why your design rationale is the way to go. It's always important.
Yeah, that's so true. I think like a lot of people think that being a designer is just focusing on the UI side, but it covers so much, like research, doing like thinking about all the stakeholders, having those soft skills to communicate effectively. Like there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, like rather than just focusing on the front. Like there's a lot of stuff that you have to do before that even happens.
Yeah, I have a colleague who used to tell me that a designer is like a salesperson. Because you're constantly selling your design. You're constantly trying to convince somebody why this design is the best, is better than what we have currently. So I would say majority, probably maybe 3/4 of my time is persuading and communicating. 1/4 of it is just designing. Designing is the easy part.
Yeah. So I guess my next question is, what is one of the favorite parts of your job and what you do?
I think the favorite part of my job is working with different stakeholders, different people on my team to really trying to solve a customer's problem or business problem. Like having different perspective in the room and discuss the problem and trying to come up with a solution together. I think it's what I enjoy the most being a designer.
Yeah.
Essentially, a designer is a problem solver, right? There's a problem that you need to solve. How do we go about to solve it the best? Maybe it's not the best solution in the entire world, but it's the best of what we can have based on all the constraints. There's business constraints, there's tech constraints a lot of the time. So how do we, come up with a solution that meets all the constraints and all the requirements and still launch and still get tested, right? So that's what I like. And then just, working with like a lot of talented people around me, learning from them, product people have very long, like a bigger vision of what the roadmap should be. A lot of times designers are very focused on honing in this specific screen. So to really talk to people from product or from marketing, how do we market a product, even though if your product is amazing, but there's no marketing to it, nobody knows about your product, right? Yeah. So having that different perspective with others, it's what I enjoy, talking. Cool. Yeah.
And what is the challenge that you face on your job?
Challenges I think is more trying to satisfy everyone's needs and wants. It's maybe marketing wanted to, for acquisition for example, the marketing always want to focus on like the trial tick rate, like as many people like clicking on this sign up for trial, this is our metric of success. Fantastic. But if you think about user experience, right? Users, if that person sign up and then they actually cancel the plan 2 months later, to either one, they actually didn't want it, two, maybe that was a freebie at the very beginning, they just signed up for the sake of it, and they cancel 2 months later, then is this really a good metrics we want to track? Or should we track the retention rate? So
Right.
for us, there's always a constant struggle between marketing and user experience and product, where we focus on the long-term goal. Are we able to retain the customer in the long run? Are they still a high value customer that continue to bring a business? Meaning, like, not only do they continue to pay for the membership, are they actively listening to the content we have? If so, then they are active listeners. So that's good. But if you are just somebody who just signed up for a trial and then totally forgot about it, and we have like an auto charge, they don't really know, oh, actually, you can see from the data, from a quantitative data, that, oh, this person is still paying. Fantastic. But if you look at the listening history, you find that actually they didn't listen. So how do we balance what success metric we should look at? It's I think it's a constant struggle.
Yeah.
Depending on the team you're on, your perspective would be different.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess my last question is, what kind of advice do you have for somebody looking to go into this field? I know you said you did a bachelor's degree in computer science and then you went to Lancaster to study design. Do you think that's sort of necessary for somebody, say their school doesn't have a design major? Is it necessary to go get another degree in design? Or how would you recommend they kind of start out?
I would say the short answer is you do not need a degree to get into UX design or to be extremely talented to be in UX. A lot of the colleagues I work with in present and in past, a lot of them do not have a degree in design. More so, they just learn on their own. A lot of them are business analysts. They came from a background of research and history. They bring in different skills. I think what's unique about the UX industry is that a lot of the skill sets that you have from different fields apply to UX, because it's such a problem-solving heavy job that you don't really need design. You don't need to be amazing in visual design to be a good UX designer, because you can solve a problem. So, and then I know in the States, that's a lot of like boot camp. I'm not sure if they have it in Canada. So there's a lot. Oh, there are. Okay, good.
There's a lot coming up now in Vancouver. I think people are starting to realize that this is in demand field, and there's a lot of boot camps around it.
Yeah, so I mentored two ladies they are going through a boot camp called Springboard in the States. Springboard and General Assembly. Okay. So these boot camps are pretty intense. I think it's 6 months. And so throughout the 6 months, they teach you about, the roadmap, design, putting a deck together, stakeholder, how do you persuade them, what is the KPI, you define all that, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of them actually are able to get internship in the States with like big corporations. They have internship program. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of them transition into full-time with these companies after the internship is over. So I wouldn't necessarily think that you must have a design degree in order to get your foot in the door, but it's more so when you are interviewing at the junior level, perhaps you want to do some reimagine of what, say for example, if you have to reimagine doing the Facebook app, for example. Oh, okay, that's too big. Maybe to reimagine doing Google Map, for example. How would you go about it? Would you be like, perhaps you want to like figure out what are the current problems that Google Map has, and then you just try to solve it. So the idea is that employers understand that as a fresh grad, you don't have real life experience, but is really looking at how you look at a problem and how you approach it. That's what's the most important as a fresh grad going to UX design. So so I think also being present, being open-minded, always showing up. I think always showing up is like one of the key advice that I got from my mentor that applies to work and to life. So just show up. There are times I remember when I was in New York, I signed up for a lot of those meetup group in the city. A lot of them are like mentorships or career connections or whatever. And it's like sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to go to that meetup, and then the day off, you're like kind of like, I don't really feel like going. Do I really need to go there? Do I really need to? I don't know those people. Do I need to mingle? You get all these thoughts in your head, and I have it. I still have it. Yeah. And sometimes you're just like, I don't want to be bothered. But at the end of the day, I like 10 out of 10 times when I just tell myself, you know what, just show up. Let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And always those good things that happens, because you never know what kind of people you meet there, what kind of conversation you have that might, give you some advice, one piece of advice, amazing. And a lot of times you might find your potential employer during those meetings. So I think it's best to just just show up.
Yeah.
You're no loss. There's no loss. You just show up, and then if you didn't make any connection, at least you be there. Try new things and be open-minded. And it's an exciting field to be in.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it, and I think it's really cool how you got to where you are from, doing computer science, startup, and then at Audible. So yeah, it's been really interesting.